you're trying to say?
So you would recall that when we launched the two reports in 2015, one in April and I think the other one in May or June, there were, at that time, this administration was very new, and there were several promises saying that they have heard the allegations that have been made by Amnesty International and a thorough investigation will happen. We are yet to see that happen, so that's what we're saying.
What investigations are you looking at?
We would like to see independent investigations. So, for example, in the case of the military, we cannot expect the military to investigate itself. So we would like to see independent investigative committees set up, and whatever recommendations come out of those investigations are fully implemented.
You see, because I was asking, based on the fact that some people probably have lost touch of what exactly the issues are, you know, because this is just one of them. I know you're also talking about torture, criminalizing torture. You're also talking about the death penalty and how you want it abolished. And so what specific examples were you pointing at?
There is no offense of torture in the criminal code. What there is the torture of animals. There is nothing that makes it criminal to torture human beings. And so that's why we are clamoring for the criminalization of torture. Because as we know, torture is commonly used as an investigative tool. And we don't believe that that is a viable investigative tool. And even if it were, torture should be illegal in all its forms.
But did you approach the military?
Yes, we always, before we launch any report, in the course of our investigations, we always reach out to the military or whichever organization or institution is involved. And because we have an obligation to balance the stories that we tell. We have an obligation to hear the two sides, and so we give both sides an opportunity to respond to our queries. It's then left for them to respond or not to respond. I recall in particular the report, Stars on Their Shoulders, Blood on Their Hands. At the back page, one of the back pages, you would find a list of the engagements or communications we had with the Nigerian military. And I did do a count recently, and I found that there were 23 instances. Some are letters, some are opportunities to meet, and many of those letters were not responded to. So we do engage with them. And before we launch the report, once we're done with our research, or at least we have a first draft of the research, we then have an obligation to send a summary of key findings to the authority against which we are making these allegations. And in that summary, we do explain the methodology by which we arrived at our findings, a summary of our findings, and if we have further questions, we ask those questions at that point in time, and we also ask them for their comments on those key findings. So it's left for them to, at those opportunities, to correct our findings or challenge them or whatever. But if they choose to remain silent, and then when we come out with reports, then they cry foul, then I don't think that that's any fault of ours.
You know, when you publish, you have to publish reports every year, so to speak, and then you expect the government to take quicker actions on some of these allegations. And of course, you don't get that. What you get is outright, you know, Amnesty is lying and all of that. You know, what does it tell about the government, or how does it make you feel?
I think if you are in the human rights field, these types of reactions will not be new to you. So, in as much as we would want better responses, it doesn't discourage us from carrying on the work that we do. We would just continue to urge the government to take the actions that it needs to take in order to protect human rights. Denials will always happen, but we are hoping that at some point in time, action will be taken. And that is why we as an organization don't work alone. We work with partners on the ground. We also reach out to members of the international community to work with us in making sure that human rights is protected in Nigeria.
If you need to proffer solutions instead of that capital punishment, what would you be talking about?
We would be recommending more prison terms. That's what we would be recommending as an alternative to the death penalty.
I need to find out exactly, because this is one issue that has been coming up on the table repeatedly, especially the issue to do with the allegations against the military. Now that the military has this stance and Amnesty has this stance, you know, where do you think that disconnect is?
I think that if any government is serious about protecting human rights, there really shouldn't be a disconnect between human rights advocates like us and government organizations. What there should be is more of a collaborative approach. We don't rule out the possibility that there can be some human rights violations along the way. But what then needs to be is when we as watchdogs point that out, then there needs to be that collaboration. Let's sit down at the table and find out what are the root causes of this.
Which has never happened.
Which doesn't happen.
Has never happened.
I can't say has never happened when it comes to government organizations in general, but when it comes to the military, yes, it's never happened.
And so what really would you want to see happening in that regard?
What we would like to see is independent investigations, because the military has demonstrated that they're not interested in having this dialogue. That is what their denials demonstrate. So what we would like to see is for the federal government to set up independent investigations that can actually have this dialogue, not just with Amnesty International, but civil society in general and other stakeholders.
Have you had cause to see your allegations as extreme?
No, actually not, because our partners, the local organizations that we work with, oftentimes even quarrel with us that we are not saying as much as should be said. They oftentimes think that our numbers are underestimated. They oftentimes, yes, we had the same situation with the conflict in the Northeast. We had that same situation with the IPOB members. And even in case of housing rights, for example, we often have those types of situations where people say, no amnesty. There are more than this people at risk. There are more than this number that you're saying that have been affected. So that's why oftentimes when we put out figures, we say at least, because we know that at least this number has been affected. We as an organization can back that up. And so perhaps when further investigation is done, it may reveal that our partners are right and we're wrong. We're not saying our partners are right or wrong or right, but we are just saying that as an organization, we need to maintain our credibility. And so for us to maintain our credibility, we need to only say what as an organization we can throw our weight behind.
All right, Ms. Morayo, we'll take a break right now. We're still on the Amnesty 2016 report. We'll be right back on this. Please stay with us.